Serious, what is it like to have children you don't want? I don't know if I fall into that category, but sometimes I feel like I do. I love my kids, and I'm told I'm a pretty good dad, and sometimes I enjoy it, but most of the time it's just draining. I explain it as being like an introvert at a party full of strangers. It's not that caring for kids is painful or whatnot, just like talking to strangers isn't painful, it's just draining. It sucks the energy out of you, whether you're good at it or not. At a party, my goal is that the people I talk with feel heard and cared about and have fun, and that no one knows I'm secretly watching the clock waiting to leave. And with kids, my goal is that they are happy and engaged and feel loved and wanted and cared for, and don't think I'm counting the seconds to bedtime. But accomplishing that drains me. I understand that there are people out there who enjoy spending time with kids, just like there are people who enjoy talking to strangers, and suffice it to say I'm just not one of them. So I guess I want my kids, but what I really want is for my kids to magically be old enough that they're no longer draining, and for me to get my life back a little. I mean, I love them and I want them to be happy, and if anyone ever tried to take them from me I would go to heck and back to prevent it. But when was the last time I took a bike ride? When was the last time I looked forward to the weekend rather than seeing it as an exhausting slog? When was the last time I went into Monday a little rested, rather than just beaten down and exhausted? And, as importantly, when's the next time I'll get to do so? I don't know if I'm in this category. Probably not, but I definitely do feel that way a lot more than I'd like. I resonate with this so much. I 110% know the feeling you are describing. It's so conflicting to feel so drained but still love them. I love your analogy. A girl I worked with had a 5-year plan. Get a designer man, have a massive wedding, travel to fancy hotels and have a baby. She managed it all except the baby. 2 years of IVF later and still no baby. After a long adoption process they get a 6-month-old. 3 months later they give him back and divorce. She realized that she had only wanted a baby because that's what people did and that meant she was successful. She had never thought about what having a baby meant and what it would do to her perfect life. The husband couldn't live with what she had decided, so left. At least the baby went to a couple who did want him eventually, instead of staying with her. My friend had a baby as fast as she could, because that meant she had one life first, in our friend group, only to realize that she now has a baby, forever. I had genetic testing done during very early pregnancy to screen for congenital problems and mentioned I would abort if they were present. I had friends severely upset with me about this. I know I couldn't handle a disabled child financially or emotionally. I had to be honest with myself. Frick anyone who judges you about that. They're not the ones who will be raising said disabled child. Good for you. I remember having to stop at my dad's work, the receptionist leading me back to his office, and her gushing about what a great guy he is and what a diligent worker to put in so much overtime. Just listening to this woman fail to realize she was describing an absent father, and a mean one at that. This is kinda crazy because I was just thinking about this today. I'm not gonna use a throwaway or anything. Not that I think anyone on here would actually know me. When you have a kid you kinda get this idea in your head on how things are gonna be. How you're going to teach them things, share special moments as they learn and have this cool amazing bond. Then your kid comes into this world and is not at all what you expect. My kid is special needs and has major developmental delays. He's 2 and basically just lives in his own world. Doesn't communicate, doesn't respond to his name, and has basically missed every single milestone out there. So you feel regret, despair, and a whole bunch of other negative stuff. Especially guilt. It wasn't his fault he came into the world this way. He didn't ask to be here. So there's a lot of complex emotions going on. However bad it makes me feel though, I just kind of wish he didn't exist. For instance, as I was writing this, I went to the bathroom and in the 3 minutes I was gone he took a dump, forced both his hands into his diaper and smeared crap all over his face and pin and everywhere else. Now my whole apartment reeks and I had a half hour of cleanup because I left my toddler alone for all of 3 minutes. This isn't the first time this has happened. I just can't connect with him and it has me feeling like I'm just his caretaker rather than his dad. I was a nanny for a lady who really didn't want children but needed up having 5 because she loved her husband. Each of her pregnancies or her medical condition go worse. With her youngest she had to be in the hospital for 2 months because she had so many kidney stones. Part of her condition is she produces kidney stones at a crazy rate, and they are rare stones that have a hook on them. Her kidneys are also more like a sponge looking organ than kidney, that aren't functioning over 25%. She would give her life for those kids even though she never wanted them. Crappy part, when the youngest was 2, her health was declining a lot, and her husband left her for a chick he just met because, and I quote, "I'm sick of you being sick. I miss those kids so much and I miss her." She got full custody and has even better insurance now that her ex left her, and he pays huge in child support and alimony every month. I knew that was coming. She's sacrificing everything to keep him happy and I thought, I bet he leaves her. So sad. I have custody of my brother's kids. I didn't want them. I already have one of my own. My brother's kids are not as well behaved as my children. It is very frustrating. I love them. I will protect them and take care of them. I find myself very upset by the fact that I just can't seem to love them as much as my children. It's depressing. I hate myself because I feel this way. I wish it was just my children a lot of the times. My brother's kids put a strain on my marital relationship because they act out so much. My brother is homeless and addicted to drugs, with really no hope of him getting better. Sucks. I just wish it would go back to a family of 3. 7 is just too much for most things. Want a regular sized vehicle with smaller monthly payments and lower insurance? Nope. Gotta have something that seats 7 or more. Holidays? Gotta plan on a family size of 7 instead of 3. It's frustrating. I try so hard to not let my nieces and nephews see that I struggle with this. But kids are smart and I know they pick up on this. I hate that I can't just be happy with this. At least for their sake. Can't talk to family about it. I'm this hero who took the kids so they wouldn't end up in foster care or group homes. But I'm really not a hero. I stepped up because no one else would. But I don't think I'm cut out for it. Hey, that is an incredible and selfless thing you are doing. I don't believe your feelings are your fault or even that they are wrong. I do think you should maybe talk to an experienced family therapist. They may be able to help both you and your sister's children. You're making the best of a bad situation. Don't beat yourself up because you're not perfect. Hang in there. This is a story of a very close friend of mine. On a bit different note, but I guess it could fit in some light. He was abused as a kid, violence and mentally, by both parents, and was scared of ever even getting close to kids, in a fear he would hurt them in some way. He is generally a really meek, but caring person, like a total opposite of what he got at home. This was his just coping mechanism, as kids literally clung to him. Then he met a loving woman and they married. She slowly warmed him up to being around younglings. It helped. She works in preschool daycare, and finally they both decided it's okay to go. 2 attempts, sadly, and little over a year later he was holding small baby in his arms, his eyes, his hair, her face, her smile. He told me, during the pregnancy he was super happy, and did everything he could for his wife and future junior. He started loving it truly, and when he felt it kicking, he was internally overflowed with happiness that a small human was growing there, and he or she will have dreams, laughs and hurdles. Yet, standing there, he felt nothing, like no spark, no love, no happiness, no resentment, no joy, nothing. He was holding small, hot, moving piece of meat which he had absolutely no attachment to. It crushed him. Talk with wife crushed him even more. He did everything he could to care for her in hope he will grow to love, but it never came. As soon as time allowed, he went into therapy, and after 3 years heard that sometimes this just happens. His daughter is now 6, is healthy and happy, as far as I can tell, but I heard my share of his pain. He feels inferior as a human for deceiving his daughter, and he powers through it by sheer willpower and effort. If I can't love her, at least I will still try to give her something I couldn't have, caring home. He told me exactly once that he really regrets agreeing to have a kid, but I could feel his shame. His wife is a wonderful person enough to accept him like this. She told us, my fiance is more of a support than I am. She wanted more kids, but she is really afraid to put more on him. Raising one will be enough of a challenge for them, that's for sure. I know he will keep all his promises and words, but it already takes a toll on him. I have spoken with a woman who feels nothing towards her kids. She had them because that is what the church requires and her husband wants them. But I don't think it's just the kids. Even though she says she loves her husband, I don't think that's what she feels for him. She was picked on severely growing up and he is really good to her. I think it's thankfulness that she feels and confuses it with love. Anyways, she knows that it's wrong. Her words: to not love her kids and decided to view parenting as a project with the best possible outcome is have her children grow into healthy, happy and well-adjusted adults. She did clarify that she doesn't hate them or resent them. After all, they were part of her life plan. So she made up a way following all the best parenting advice and making sure she follows through. For example, keeps track of how often she cuddles them by minutes noted in her journal. And if she notices that she hasn't been doing it a lot, she tries to correct it. She also leaves discipline up to her husband because she doesn't want them to associate any negative feelings towards her. She knows they'll eventually be able to recognize her lack of feelings towards them and will think her discipline came from a bad place. From what she told me, she has never explained any of this to her husband and he has no clue how she feels. This conversation lasted about 4 hours and was the moment I realized that you can choose to be a good parent or a bad one. Regardless of how you feel, it's never the child's fault and an adult is responsible for making up for what they lack. Oh crap. She sounds like she is just going through with the motion of life and doing what is expected and never really experiencing life. I was conceived to replace a baby boy that died. My mom was so disappointed I was a girl. She forgot my name for a while, and now I have 2 middle names. I had a brother growing up who was favored by both my parents, but he really was amazing. He was my favorite too. He died 5 years ago in a motorcycle wreck, and I'm the least favorite. My mom admitted this freely. Also, I am the last remaining child. Also, I don't care that my parents are disappointed that I was the one that survived. I've made myself who I want to be. I only talk to my dad occasionally, and my mom became an alcoholic because 2 of her kids died. I don't talk to her. Shrug. My life is separated from theirs, and I encourage other people to cut off the cancerous people, even if it's your parents. It's liberating. It set the tone for the rest of my life. One of those hindsight is 20/20 things. I honestly believe if I'd never had a kid, particularly as young and alone as I was in a very socially backwards area, I'd have made a lot more of myself. I know that could be taken as self-rationalization for lack of trying and failures, but I also know how I felt, how I have never bonded with my kid, and how both our lives could have been a lot better had I either waited to have her, or let another couple adopt her like I wanted but was forced out of the choice. Unequivocally, a woman can do more for herself without a whole other human to birth and take care of. Doesn't sound like self-rationalization really. Not that that makes you feel better, but maybe a little validating on your perception of the situation. I think this is a conversation that more women, especially, should have. You are close to being burnt at the stake if you confess that actually if you could turn back the clock, you wouldn't have children. I feel that these conversations may stop perpetuating this idea that if you're a woman you will automatically adore your children too. You have more options than just having children. Women do also go through things such as PND, and maybe others talking about it won't make them feel so guilty and alienated. I'm 33 and hid for a long time I didn't want kids. Never talked about it. I feel alienated for it. That I'm wrong for not liking kids or wanting them. I'm now realizing I'm not alone. It's like having some guests at your house that never get around to leave for years, but you must take care of them to avoid getting into trouble and judged by others. The good old it's like taking care of a drunk midget for 12 years, then a hungover guy for 6 more years and, hopefully, he goes to rehab and gains independence. Now this is a taboo subject. People want to say anal sex is taboo, or drugs, or that sort of thing. No, this is the kind of topic that is actually taboo in our culture. Good question, OP. This thread is reaffirming that I want to remain child-free. I have 3, a girl and twin boys. I really thought I wanted kids because that's what I thought I was supposed to do, be a wife and have kids. I love them, and I want the best for them. but I don't have the same connection to them that other moms seem to have. I don't miss them when I have to go on a long trip. I just feel relief. Having them home because of the pandemic has been really hard for me. I have a lot of guilt about it. I don't withhold affection or anything, but I'm not a naturally affectionate person. My husband is. I feel pretty lonely and left out when they are playing together. I feel like I don't belong. It's a weird dichotomy. I don't really know. Even though I'm surrounded by family, it feels pretty dang lonely. I don't feel like I belong in my own life. I fantasize about taking off alone and living somewhere by myself. But I don't want to mess them up like that. They're innocent and don't deserve it. So I do my best and hope I'll be alive in 10 years to be alone again. My husband and I have been raising my niece for 3.5 years. We also had my teenage nephew for a year before we had her, but growing up with my sister as a mom had done more damage to him than we could handle. My niece is almost 16 now. I'm 29 and I feel like I gave up my fun and careless years to raise my sister's kids. I've always dreamed of having my own children, and now that I'm struggling to conceive, I can't help but feel resentful that I'm raising one of my junky sister's 6 healthy children. Overall, my niece is a good kid. I love her and I want her to do well in life, but she doesn't feel like she's our kid and she doesn't think of us when she thinks about who her parents are. She experienced a lot of trauma while living with my sister and it's a lot to handle. She was cutting for a while and recently admitted to bulimia and has had suicidal thoughts. Her counselor keeps advising us to do more stuff with her and spend more time with her to pull her out of her dark moods. I feel like my mental energy is already 90% devoted to her, and the thought of giving up even more of the 10% reserved for me and my husband is incredibly daunting. It doesn't help that I grew up in a fairly dysfunctional household and my niece is one of my biggest triggers that brings those issues back up for me. I was just starting therapy to work on my past traumas when my niece started having a bunch of issues, so all of my sessions became about managing her issues instead of dealing with my own. All I wanted when I was her age was somebody to save me from the dysfunction I was growing up in. I feel like I'm giving her exactly what I wanted as a teen, but it's not enough for her and she doesn't appreciate it. I've also witnessed all of my siblings and my nephew go totally off the rails and into addiction and bad life choices at 15-16 years old. So my niece developing a bunch of issues at this age triggered the heck out of me and made me feel like I was fighting against her inevitable downfall. Add that in with my complicated relationship with my sister and the resentment I feel towards her for placing this burden on me, the family I have to maintain contact with so that I'm not keeping my niece from them, and the fact that I'm not my niece's legal guardian, so every medical thing is a huge hassle and it's all just too much. I feel trapped and like I'm sacrificing my own future children on the slim chance that my niece might overcome my family's generational dysfunction. Ex-girlfriend baby trapped me. She stopped taking her birth control and didn't tell me, then cheated on me while pregnant. She was, and still is, a crappy person. At that point I wanted nothing to do with her and was not prepared to be a father. I was young and dumb and still learning who I was and what I wanted to do with my life. She gave me the option to walk away and never see the kid again. I thought about it but couldn't bring myself to. Knowing my kid was out there was going to weigh heavily on my conscience. It was difficult at times. While my friends were studying, partying, traveling, I was working and learning to be a father. I didn't want this kid, but here I was and I was going to make the best of the situation. My daughter is 13 now and I have full custody. Her mother is a piece of crap and my daughter is old enough to know the difference. She's with me now and I couldn't be happier. My daughter is a driving force in my life. I need to be responsible. I need to be accountable. I need to be financially successful. It keeps me going forward and has really made the man I am today. Having a kid when you're barely 20 has ways of making or breaking someone. My daughter was the child I didn't want but ended up being what I needed. Coming from a woman who was raised by her father, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing. The courage, selflessness you possess. She notices, and if she ever finds herself wanting a relationship with a man once she's older, she will have the opportunity to look for men who have those same qualities you do. Again, thank you. My mother point blank told us she didn't want children and my father had begged and begged her for me. Then my younger sister was an accident. It's always been an awkward, very strained and very tainted relationship. For a long time I held a ton of resentment and disgust for her. It's made me into what I consider to be a pretty great parent, though I wanted children, and even knowing I'd be giving up sleep and freedoms, I knew I wanted them to know they were wanted, planned for, adored. My dad remarried and adopted 2 children of his second wife's, then they had 1 together, making us a family of 5. Now I get so much in way of a rich childhood for my children, with all their cousins and aunt and uncles to love them. It's not always completely life ruining, I suppose, but it did have a profound effect on how the first half of my life went for sure. How I felt about myself. A very close friend has 2 children, 6 and 2, 1/2, but really because her husband wanted kids and she knew he'd leave her if she stood her ground on not wanting kids. She loves her kids with all her heart, but misses the life she could have had without them. Aside from work, just started her residency. All she does is being a mom. She has little to no time for her own hobbies anymore, and misses that a lot. I can't say if the kids notice that at their age, but I worry they might at some point, or that she'll one day just crack and resent either her kids or her husband for taking that child-free life from her. This happened to a friend of a friend. She had the kids, and it created such resentment that her husband divorced her. So now she's got 2 kids she never really wanted, eta they split custody 50-50, and no husband that she did want. Yikes. My ex-husband was emotionally abusive and, if I'm being completely honest with myself, forced me into getting pregnant 3 months after going into labor and losing our daughter at 20 weeks. I wasn't ready and I hadn't really had a chance to grieve. He quit his job 3 days into my required maternity leave, so I had to go back to work as soon as physically possible. Our son was 13 weeks early, spent 2 months in the NICU and cost over $1 million in his first year. Thank goodness for good insurance. Now my son is almost 7. His father hasn't been in the picture for years, and until recently, I was doing it all on my own. My son showed incredible strength to grow big enough to breathe on his own and come home. So I've made it my mission to give him a great life and make sure he never knows that I didn't want to be a parent after my daughter died. I commend you for staying strong and fighting the good fight. Deadbeat dads are puzzling entities. I will be a father this month or the next, and I want to be in the picture 100.00%. God bless you. I know you will give yourself and yours a great life. My girlfriend had a 2-year-old when I met her. He's 5 now. I didn't plan to have kids, but I love her. I'm pretty much used to it. I teach him stuff and he's attached to my hip when he's here. Joint custody with the father, but ideally I'd have preferred to not have a kid around. I can deal though. He can be a little shithead sometimes, LMAO. Also it's weird disciplining someone else's kid, so I'm just getting there. I can see the betrayal in his eyes. I'm supposed to be like the fun uncle. Getting onto him is weird. I never really said that out loud. This is liberating. Similar situation, but the little kid is now 22. It's a wild ride, man. But don't worry about the disciplining. It becomes easier with time. Just chat to the mom so you know you have her sign off and you both discipline in the same way. I have kids and I wanted them, but I was an unwanted kid. My mom and non-bio dad married when I was young. He raised me, but I never felt love from him at all. He married her to get her out of a bad situation. I thought he didn't want kids, but when I was about 5/6, my sister was born. He wanted kids. He just didn't want me. I saw how different he was with her and his other kids they had later. Those who have kids that you don't want, they're aware on some level. I've honestly thought about this question before. My son, 14 months was planned, and he is incredible, absolutely a light in our lives. On the other hand, I was super ill the entire pregnancy, depressed and struggling up until a few months ago. Now, this was made worse by 2 moves, military, and COVID of course, but I never ever want to do this again. Not quite the same, but similar. We get so much pressure on the next kid from friends and family, and everyone assumes you'll have more. I absolutely am one and done. At least biologically. I did not enjoy the baby days, and now that he's a toddler, he's amazing. I know 2 would just be above my capacity, and I would regret having another. That being said, my husband and I are both really drawn to fostering, and will likely do so when we are at our final posting location and our kid is a bit older. The next kid question never seems to stop. I have 2 kids, 6F and 3M, and I am still getting asked if I am going to have another. I am so done with pregnancy and newborns. I would like to start taking family vacations with my kids and not have to worry about breastfeeding and diapers, or how to heat up a bottle of formula in a hotel room. If you never had a mother, it is very hard to be a mother, raised by people to whom you were an unwanted burden, an imposition, the child who was always in the way. A person like that, like me, does not know how to love. You know you are supposed to. You see it on TV, in the movies, you read about it in books, but somehow it never happens. If you were born and raised in a place and time where there was no birth control, abortion was illegal and sexual abuse was as common as flies on a piece of rotten meat, a lot of children were not wanted, and then the child became an adult who did not know how to love anything. This is a common enough story. No one likes to hear it, so it does not get told. This comment almost made me cry. I was this person. Then I met my current partner and he taught me how to love, completely accepted me in my broken ways and was able to open me up. I actually never realized how socially awkward and how wrong my behaviors were until I didn't have to do them anymore to protect myself. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.